The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal fields of Kepler 442b. Elder Thane Vextar stood at the observation deck of the main colony building, watching his people work peacefully among the glowing formations. The Velothi had lived this way for thousands of years. Their translucent bodies caught the light beautifully as they moved through their daily tasks. Everything changed when the first distress signal arrived. "Elder Vextar," called Communications Officer Nalthek from across the room. His voice shook with fear. "We are receiving an emergency transmission from the Altair colonies." The holographic display flickered to life. The image was broken and filled with static, but the message was clear. War had come to the galaxy. "This is colony leader Melvaran of Altair Prime." The desperate voice crackled through the speakers. "The Dominion Empire has arrived. Their ships block out our sun. They demand complete surrender of all crystal mines and the exile of our people to work camps. We have no weapons, no defenses. If anyone receives this message, please send help. We cannot hold out much longer." The transmission cut to static. Elder Vextar felt his crystalline heart grow cold. The Dominion Empire was a name whispered in fear across the galaxy. They were conquerors who took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. No one had ever successfully fought them. "Send a message to all Velothi worlds," Vextar ordered. "Tell them to prepare defensive measures." Nalthek looked confused. "Elder, what defensive measures? We have no military. We have never needed one." This was the problem. The Velothi were a peaceful people. They had no concept of war, no weapons, no soldiers. Their technology focused on mining, communication, and art. They had never harmed another living being. Over the next few days, more signals arrived. Each one brought worse news. From the Beta Centauri system. "The Dominion ships are in orbit. They are bombarding our cities from space. We tried to negotiate, but they do not listen. Our children are hiding in the deep caves. If anyone can help us, please come quickly." From the Vega colonies. "This may be our final transmission. The Dominion ground forces have landed. They wear black armor and carry weapons that turn our people to dust. They show no mercy. We managed to hide some of our young ones, but I do not think we will survive the night. Tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them that the Vega colonies died free." From New Crystalia. The transmission was just screaming, then silence. Elder Vextar called an emergency meeting of the colony council. The dozen Velothi leaders gathered in the crystal chamber, their faces glowing with worry. "The pattern is clear," Vextar explained to the group. "The Dominion Empire is moving through our sector, conquering every Velothi world. They want our crystal mines. Our people mean nothing to them except as slave labor." Council member Yar then spoke up. "How long do we have?" "Based on their movement pattern, perhaps 3 months," Vextar replied. "Maybe less." "Then we must evacuate," suggested Council member Tixara. "Load the ships and flee to unexplored space." "And go where?" Vextar asked. "The Dominion controls hundreds of systems. They have faster ships than us. They would hunt us down." The council fell silent. Everyone knew the truth. The Velothi had nowhere to run. "We could try to fight," whispered Council Member Belfox. The others stared at him in shock. Fighting was against everything the Velothi believed in. They had no experience with violence, no knowledge of warfare. "With what?" Yarthan asked. "Our mining tools? Our transport ships? The Dominion has war machines that can destroy planets." Over the following weeks, the colony tried to prepare. They sent their children to the deepest caves. They hid their most precious crystals. They practiced evacuation drills. But everyone knew it was hopeless. The transmissions from other worlds stopped coming. One by one, the Velothi colonies went silent. The galaxy map in the communication center showed fewer and fewer friendly signals each day. Elder Vextar spent his nights staring at the stars, wondering if this was how his people would end. After thousands of years of peace and beauty, would they simply disappear? Would anyone remember that the Velothi had once existed? He decided to send one final message. Standing before the main communication array, Vexitar composed what he believed would be his people's last words to the galaxy. He broadcast on all frequencies, hoping someone somewhere might hear. This is Elder Thane Vextar of the Kepler 442b colony. We are the last free Velothi world. Our people have lived in peace for millennia. We have harmed no one, threatened no one, conquered no one. Now the Dominion Empire comes to destroy us, and we have no way to defend ourselves. He paused, looking out at his people working in the crystal fields, unaware that death was coming from the stars. We do not ask for much. We do not seek revenge or conquest. We only want to live, to create, to raise our children in peace. If there is anyone in this galaxy who believes that innocent people should not be murdered for their resources, please help us. We know it is dangerous. We know the Dominion seems impossible to defeat. But if you do not come, we will all die. Tatestaktia. Message was sent across the galaxy on every frequency the Velothi could access. Vextar knew it was probably useless. Most species were too afraid of the Dominion to risk helping strangers. Others were too far away to arrive in time. Days passed. No response came. The Velothi continued their preparations. They moved supplies to hidden locations. They practiced hiding. They said goodbye to each other, just in case. But in the dark of space, far beyond their detection range, something was stirring. On a blue planet called Earth, military officers studied the desperate transmission. They looked at star charts and calculated distances. They examined reports about the Dominion Empire and their military strength. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood in the briefing room of the UEC Indomitable, reading the translated message for the 10th time. His dark eyes were hard with determination. "Sir?" His communications officer asked, "What are your orders?" Lee Dae-ho looked at the faces of his soldiers. These were men and women who had volunteered to fight in the dark between stars to protect people they had never met. "Prep the drop pods," he said quietly. "We have work to do." But the Velothi knew nothing of this. They continued their peaceful lives, waiting for the end. Elder Vextar stood each morning on his observation deck, watching the sunrise and wondering if this would be the day the black ships appeared. The galaxy had abandoned them, or so they thought. 3 months later, long-range sensors detected the approaching Dominion fleet. The time for hope had passed. Now there was only waiting for the inevitable. The Velothi prepared to die as they had lived, with dignity and peace. They never expected that help might come falling from the sky like fire. War Master Krex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Annihilator, watching the peaceful blue and green world grow larger on the main screen, his 4 arms crossed behind his back in satisfaction. Another easy conquest awaited. The Dominion Empire had perfected the art of war over centuries. Their black ships moved through space like a plague, consuming worlds and leaving nothing behind but empty husks. Krex had personally overseen the destruction of 47 civilizations. This would be 48. "Status report," Krex commanded, his voice echoing through the bridge. "All ships in position, War Master," replied his tactical officer. 17 destroyers, 5 cruisers, and the Annihilator. The planet's defense grid shows no military installations, no weapon platforms, no fighter squadrons. Krex laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "These crystal creatures are even more pathetic than the report suggested. Begin standard bombardment protocol." The first wave of missiles struck the planet's major cities. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers across the surface. The Dominion had learned that quick, overwhelming force prevented any organized resistance. On the planet below, the Velothi ran for the caves as their homes turned to dust and flame. Elder Vextar watched from his emergency shelter as centuries of peaceful civilization vanished in minutes. "Any response from the planetary government?" Krex asked. "Yes, War Master. They are broadcasting on all frequencies. Complete surrender. They offer no resistance and beg for mercy." "Mercy is not profitable," Krex replied. "Continue bombardment. I want the surface installations destroyed, but the crystal mines intact. Begin landing operations in 1 hour." The Dominion had turned conquest into a science. First, orbital bombardment to break the enemy's will. Second, ground forces to secure valuable resources. Third, enslavement of any survivors for labor. Fourth, strip mining until the planet was useless. It had worked on dozens of worlds, but as Krex prepared to give the order for the ground invasion, his communications officer interrupted. "War Master, we are receiving a strange signal. It appears to be coming from deep space." "Ignore it," Krex said. "Probably refugees trying to escape. Our scouts will hunt them down later." "Sir, the signal is not from this system. It's coming from beyond our sensor range. And it's getting stronger." Krex frowned. No one interfered with Dominion operations. The galaxy had learned that lesson through blood and fire. "Put it on the main screen," he ordered. The display flickered, showing static and broken images. Then a voice came through, speaking in broken galactic standard with a strange accent. "Attention, Dominion forces. This is Captain Lee Day-Ho of the United Earth Coalition 7th Orbital Drop Division. You are ordered to cease military operations against the civilian population and withdraw from this system immediately." Silence filled the bridge. Krex's officers looked at each other in confusion. In 500 years of Dominion expansion, no one had ever issued them an ultimatum. "Earth?" Krex said slowly. "I have never heard of this species. Run a check on all galactic databases." His intelligence officer worked quickly. After several minutes, he looked up with confusion. "War Master, there is no record of any species called humans or any planet called Earth in our files. They do not exist in any known star charts." "Then they are obviously some minor species trying to threaten us," Krex decided. "Respond to their transmission. Tell them that the Dominion Empire claims this world by right of conquest. Any interference will result in their complete destruction." The response came within minutes, and it surprised everyone on the bridge. "Negative, Dominion vessel. We have monitored your unprovoked attack on a peaceful civilian population. This constitutes a war crime under galactic law. You have 5 minutes to begin evacuation procedures." War Master Krex felt his blood pressure rising. No one had spoken to the Dominion this way since the Great Wars centuries ago. 5 minutes, he repeated. To evacuate? This unknown species thinks they can order the mighty Dominion Empire around? He turned to his weapons officer. Prepare the main guns. When these mysterious humans arrive, we will show them what happens to those who challenge our authority. Sir, his sensor officer called out, I'm detecting multiple contacts approaching at high speed. They just jumped into the system. How many ships? Krex asked. 12 vessels, War Master. But they are much smaller than our ships. Their tonnage suggests light cruisers at best. Krex laughed again. 12 light cruisers against our entire battle fleet? These humans are either insane or incredibly stupid. On his private command channel, Admiral Yoon Hyejin spoke with her captains aboard the UEC fleet. Her ships hung in space just outside the Dominion formation, weapons powered but not yet firing. "This is Admiral Yoon to all ships," she said calmly. "Intelligence reports confirm that the Dominion Empire has never faced human military doctrine. They are expecting a traditional space battle. They are going to be disappointed." "Captain Lee," Daeho responded from his dropship. "Admiral, the 7th Division is ready for deployment. We have studied the enemy positions and identified optimal insertion points." "Understood, Captain. Begin Operation Falling Star. All ships, provide cover fire as planned." Back on the Annihilator, War Master Krex watched the human ships with growing impatience. They were not moving into attack formation. They were not firing weapons. They were just sitting there. "What are they waiting for?" he muttered. "Perhaps they realized they are outgunned," suggested his tactical officer. "Or maybe they want to negotiate," added another officer. Krex was about to order an attack when his sensor officer shouted in alarm. "War Master, the human ships are launching something. Thousands of small objects are separating from their hulls." "Missiles?" Krex asked. "No, sir. They appear to be pods of some kind. They are heading directly for the planet's surface." Krex stared at the tactical display in confusion. The pods were too small to carry significant weapons, too large to be probes. "What were the humans doing, sir?" his intelligence officer said slowly. "I believe those are troop transports. The humans are not trying to fight us in space. They are sending soldiers directly to the planet." "Soldiers?" Krex repeated. "What kind of military doctrine is this? You cannot win a space battle by landing troops on the surface." But even as he spoke, he felt a chill of uncertainty. In 5 centuries of conquest, the Dominion had never faced tactics like this. "All ships, target those pods," he ordered. "Destroy them before they reach the surface." The Dominion fleet opened fire, filling space with energy beams and missiles. But the human pods were small, fast, and numerous. Many were destroyed, but many more continued their deadly fall toward the planet. "War Master," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving another transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Krex snarled. Captain Lee Daeho's voice came through the speakers, calm and professional despite the chaos around him. "Dominion forces, this is your final warning. My soldiers are now deploying to protect the civilian population. Any continued attacks on non-combatants will be met with overwhelming force. You have one last chance to withdraw peacefully." War Master Krex felt his 4 hands clench into fists. These humans dared to threaten him? The conqueror of 47. "Worlds, continue orbital bombardment," he ordered. "Target the human landing sites. Show these insects what real power looks like." But as the first human pods crashed into the planet's surface, Krex began to understand that he was facing something the Dominion had never encountered before. An enemy that did not fight for conquest or resources. An enemy that fought for strangers. An enemy that brought war from the sky like falling stars. The galaxy was about to learn what humans called justice. Sergeant Kim Tae-woo felt the familiar butterflies in his stomach as his drop pod screamed through the atmosphere of Kepler 442b. Around him, 9 other soldiers sat strapped into their crash seats, checking weapons and equipment one final time. 30 seconds to impact. announced the pod's computer in a calm female voice that seemed wildly inappropriate for their situation. Through the small porthole, Taewoo could see the planet's surface rushing up to meet them. Explosions bloomed everywhere as Dominion ships continued their bombardment. Some were aimed at the descending human pods, but most were still targeting Velothi cities. "Remember the mission," Taewoo called to his squad over the communication system. "Protect the civilians, secure the landing zones, and show these Dominion bastards what happens when they pick on innocent people." His soldiers nodded grimly. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never see Earth again. But they also knew that somewhere below them, crystalline beings were hiding in caves, waiting to die. 10 seconds, the computer announced. Taewoo gripped his rifle tighter. In his 20 years of military service, he had jumped from aircraft, rappelled from helicopters, and even done zero-gravity insertions. But this was different. This was humanity's first real war against an alien empire. Impact. The pod hit the ground like a meteor, bouncing twice before the retro rockets fired, to slow its final descent. Even with the safety systems, the landing threw everyone against their restraints hard enough to rattle teeth. "Sound off," Taewoo ordered as the pod's doors blew open. "Squad 1, ready," came the responses as his soldiers released their harnesses and grabbed their gear. The first thing that hit them was the smell. The air was thick with smoke and the strange ozone scent of energy weapons. In the distance, they could hear the rumble of explosions and the high-pitched whine of Dominion aircraft. Taewoo was the first one out of the pod. His boots touched alien soil for the first time, and he quickly scanned the area for threats. They had landed in what looked like a crystal garden, with tall formations of blue and green stone rising around them like frozen trees. "Beautiful," whispered Private Choi Minho as he emerged from the pod. "It was," Taewoo replied, pointing to where several of the crystal formations had been shattered by weapons fire. "Now let's make sure there's something left to save." The squad quickly established a defensive perimeter around their pod. Standard operating procedure called for securing the landing zone before moving out, but the sound of battle was getting closer. "Sergeant," called Corporal Jang Yun Seo, who was monitoring their long-range communications. "I'm picking up multiple Dominion units converging on our position. Looks like we got their attention." "Good," Taewoo said, checking his rifle one more time. "That means they're not shooting civilians." Through his tactical display, he could see other human pods landing across the planet. Green dots showed successful landings, while red dots indicated pods that had been destroyed during descent. Too many red dots. "Contact!" shouted Private Lee Sunwoo from his position behind a crystal formation. "Dominion ground forces, 200 meters and closing." Taewoo moved to where he could see the approaching enemy. The Dominion soldiers were nothing like humans. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and gray skin covered in black armor. Their weapons looked like they belonged in a nightmare. "Wait for them to get closer," Taewoo ordered. "Let them think we're just another easy target." The Dominion squad approached cautiously but without real concern. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had never met serious resistance from planet-bound defenders. That was about to change. "Now," Taewoo whispered. 10 human rifles opened fire simultaneously. The Dominion soldiers dropped behind cover, their own weapons returning fire with bursts of red energy that turned crystal into glass and stone into vapor. But the humans were already moving. This was where human military doctrine differed from everything the galaxy had seen before. Other species fought in formation, trading fire until one side was overwhelmed. Humans fought like predators, using every advantage the terrain offered. Private Choi Min-ho flanked left, using the crystal formations for cover as he worked around to the enemy's side. Corporal Jang Yun-seo called in coordinates for orbital support, while Private Lee Sun-woo laid down suppressing fire that kept the Dominion soldiers pinned. Sergeant Tae-woo led the frontal assault. He moved from cover to cover with practiced efficiency, each step calculated to give him the best firing position while exposing him to the least risk. The Dominion soldiers were good fighters, but they were used to facing enemies who fought like civilized beings. Humans fought like Earth had taught them to fight, dirty, desperate, and without mercy for those who threatened the innocent. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes. When it was over, 10 Dominion soldiers lay dead, and the humans had taken only minor casualties. Strip their equipment, Tae-woo ordered. Weapons, communications gear, anything useful. We need to learn how their technology works. As his soldiers followed orders, Tae-woo studied the tactical display. Across the planet, similar scenes were playing out. Human soldiers were landing in the middle of Dominion-controlled territory and fighting with a ferocity that shocked their enemies. "Sergeant," called Corporal Jang, "I'm receiving a transmission from the local population. There's a group of Velati, civilians trapped in a mining complex about 2 kilometers from here. Dominion forces have them surrounded." Tae-woo looked at his squad. They were tired from the drop and the fight, low on ammunition, and vastly outnumbered. Standard military doctrine would be to wait for reinforcements, but humans had never been good at following standard doctrine. "Load up," he ordered. "We have people to save." As they moved out through the crystal forest, Private Choi Min-ho asked the question they were all thinking. "Sergeant, how are we supposed to win this?" "There are millions of them and only a few thousand of us." Tae-woo smiled grimly as he led his squad toward the sound of battle. "Son, they made 2 mistakes. First, they thought no one would come to help these people. Second, they thought that if someone did come, they would fight like everyone else. In this galaxy," he paused to check his rifle's ammunition counter, "they don't understand that humans don't fight wars to win territory or resources. We fight wars to protect the innocent. And when humans fight for something they believe in, we don't just want to win." The sound of Dominion weapons grew louder as they approached the mining complex. "We want to make sure the enemy never wants to fight us again." Behind them, more human pods were falling from the sky like deadly rain. Each one carried soldiers who had volunteered to travel across the galaxy to fight for people they had never met. The Velati had thought no one would come. They were about to learn that humans always came, especially when someone needed help. The galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before. Earth's children falling from heaven, bringing hope on wings of fire and fury. War Master. Krex was about to learn that humans had a very different definition of impossible. Lieutenant Park So-jin's pod came down hard in the middle of what had once been a Velothi marketplace. The beautiful crystal structures lay in ruins around her, victims of Dominion bombardment. But that wasn't what caught her attention. What caught her attention was the Dominion forward operating base that had been built right on top of the destroyed market. "Well," she said to herself as she checked her sniper rifle, "that's convenient." Her pod had been damaged during the descent, and she was alone. The rest of her reconnaissance team had been scattered across the planet when their transport was hit by Dominion fire. Standard procedure would be to find a safe position and wait for extraction. Park So-jin had never been good at following standard procedure. She studied the enemy base through her rifle's scope. It was a typical Dominion installation, prefabricated structures arranged in a defensive pattern, with weapon emplacements covering all approaches. About 50 soldiers, plus vehicles and aircraft. Nothing she couldn't handle. The problem was the group of Velothi civilians being held in the center of the base. They were bound and kneeling in a circle, while Dominion soldiers prepared what looked like execution equipment. So Jin had seen this before in the intelligence briefings. The Dominion often killed civilians to break the will of defending forces. It was effective against most species. It had never been tried against humans. She found a good position on top of a partially collapsed crystal formation, about 400 meters from the base. The angle gave her a clear view of the entire compound. She set up her rifle carefully, adjusting for wind and the planet's slightly different gravity. Through her scope, she could see the Dominion commander giving orders to his troops. He was a big one, even for his species, with elaborate markings on his armor that suggested high rank. So Jin activated her communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. Attention Dominion forces. This is Lieutenant Park So-Jin of the United Earth Coalition. Release the civilians immediately and surrender, or face the consequences. The effect was immediate. The Dominion soldiers scrambled for cover, searching for the source of the transmission. Their commander shouted orders, and weapon emplacements began scanning the surrounding area. The reply came in broken galactic standard. Human, you are alone and outnumbered 50-1. Surrender now, and we will give you a quick death. So, Jin smiled coldly. I gave you a chance. Her first shot took out the main communications array. The second destroyed their air defense system. The third shot killed the commander, dropping him in front of his own troops. Then she really got to work. Human sniper doctrine was different from anything the galaxy had seen. Other species use precision weapons for assassination or to eliminate specific high-value targets. Humans used snipers as psychological warfare specialists. So Jin moved from position to position, never staying in one place long enough for the enemy to locate her. Each shot was carefully planned for maximum impact on enemy morale. She targeted officers first, then heavy weapons operators, then anyone who tried to organize a response. The Dominion soldiers began to panic. They were taking fire from an invisible enemy who seemed to be everywhere at once. Their return fire was wild and undisciplined, wasting ammunition and revealing their positions. After 20 minutes, half the base's defenders were dead or wounded, and the rest were too scared to leave cover. That's when So-Jin made her real move. While the enemy was distracted by sniper fire from one direction, she circled around to the opposite side of the base. Moving with the stealth skills that had made her one of Earth's best reconnaissance specialists, she infiltrated the compound. The Velothi civilians were guarded by 2 soldiers who were more concerned with the sniper than with their prisoners. So Jin eliminated them silently, then began cutting the civilians' bonds. Do not be afraid, she whispered in Galactic Standard. I am here to help. Elder Yelnara, the eldest of the prisoners, stared at this strange being in amazement. The human was smaller than the Dominion soldiers, but there was something in her eyes that suggested she was far more dangerous. You came, Yelnara whispered. We sent messages into space, but we never thought anyone would come. Humans always come, So-Jin replied, helping the elderly Velothi to his feet, especially when someone needs help. But their escape was complicated by the fact that the base was still full of enemy soldiers. So-Jin needed to get 23 civilians out of a hostile compound without getting them killed. That's when she remembered something from her training. Humans didn't just fight wars, they waged psychological campaigns. She activated the base's communication system and began broadcasting on all frequencies, including those used by the Dominion fleet in orbit. "This is Lieutenant Park So-Jin to all Dominion forces," she said calmly. "I have taken control of your forward base. Your commander is dead. Half your soldiers are casualties. The civilians you were going to murder are now under my protection." She paused, letting that sink in. "I want you to think about this. One human soldier, alone and outnumbered, has just destroyed your entire operation. We have 3,000 more soldiers on this planet. You do the math." The psychological effect was immediate. Dominion soldiers throughout the base began looking at each other with uncertainty. If one human could do this much damage, what could thousands of them do? But So-Jin wasn't finished. "I'm going to walk out of this base with these civilians," she continued. "Anyone who tries to stop me will die. Anyone who lets us pass will live. The choice is yours." She shouldered her rifle and began walking toward the main gate, surrounded by the Velothi civilians. The remaining Dominion soldiers watched from cover, weapons ready but uncertain. At the gate, a young Dominion officer stepped into their path. His weapon was raised, but his hands were shaking. "You cannot leave," he said in broken Galactic Standard. "Orders are to kill all prisoners." So-Jin looked at him with the cold professionalism that had kept her alive through a dozen conflicts on Earth. "Son," she said quietly, "I've killed 37 of your friends in the last hour. Do you really want to be number 38? The young officer looked into her eyes and saw something that chilled him to the bone. This human didn't kill because she enjoyed it. She killed because it was necessary to protect innocent life, and she was very, very good at it. He stepped aside. So-Jin led the civilians out of the base and into the crystal forest beyond. Behind them, the remaining Dominion soldiers emerged from cover, staring in disbelief at what had just happened. As they walked, Elder Yelnara spoke in amazement. "How did you do that? How did one person defeat so many?" So-Jin checked her rifle, as they moved, still alert for pursuit. "Elder, your people are peaceful. You've never had to learn the art of war. The Dominion are conquerors, but they fight for profit and expansion." She paused to help one of the younger Velothi over a fallen crystal formation. "Humans fight for something different. We fight for each other, for strangers, for the idea that innocent people shouldn't die just because someone stronger wants what they have." They reached a secure position where other human soldiers were establishing a field hospital for rescued civilians. As So-Jin turned the Velothi over to the medics, she received a communication from Captain Lee Dae-ho. "Outstanding work, Lieutenant. Intelligence reports that your attack has caused panic throughout the Dominion command structure. They're starting to realize they're not fighting a conventional enemy." So-Jin smiled as she reloaded her rifle. "Sir, they have no idea what they're dealing with. These aliens have never faced an enemy that fights for justice instead of conquest." Around the planet, similar scenes were playing out. Human soldiers were rescuing civilians, destroying enemy installations, and proving that sometimes the impossible was just another word for a challenge that required creative thinking. War Master Krex was learning that humans didn't just bring war from the sky, they brought hope. War Master Krex stood before the tactical display on his flagship, watching red indicators spread across the planet's surface like a disease. Each red dot represented a Dominion position that had gone silent. Each flashing icon showed a human unit that seemed to appear from nowhere, strike with impossible effectiveness, then vanish again. "This is impossible," he muttered for the 10th time in an hour. His tactical officer, Commander Vexthul, approached cautiously. Bringing bad news to War Master Krex was never safe, but the situation was deteriorating too quickly to ignore. "War Master, we have lost contact with Forward Base 7, Mining Complex 12, and the entire 3rd Infantry Division. Our remaining ground forces are requesting immediate orbital support. Krex turned his 4 eyes toward his subordinate. How many humans landed on the planet? Intelligence estimates approximately 3,000 soldiers, War Master. 3,000? Krex repeated slowly. We have 40,000 troops on the surface. How are 3,000 humans defeating 40,000 Dominion soldiers? Commander Vex Thul had been asking himself the same question. The answer was troubling. Sir, they don't fight like any military force we've encountered. They use tactics that seem to ignore all established rules of warfare. Explain. For example, yesterday, our forces surrounded a group of 200 humans in Mining Valley 7. Standard procedure would be for the enemy to establish defensive positions and wait for relief. Instead, the humans split into small groups and attacked all our surrounding positions simultaneously. Krex frowned. That should have been suicide. That's what we thought, War Master. But somehow they coordinated their attacks perfectly. They used the mining equipment as weapons, turned the refinery's chemical storage into explosives, and even convinced the Velothi workers to help them navigate the tunnel systems. Impossible. The Velothi are pacifists. Yes, sir. But apparently they're willing to fight when someone is protecting their children. This was beyond Krex's understanding. In 5 centuries of conquest, the Dominion had developed effective strategies for defeating every type of military force. Disciplined armies were broken by superior firepower. Guerrilla fighters were crushed by overwhelming numbers. Defensive positions were reduced by orbital bombardment. But the humans seemed to use all these tactics simultaneously, switching between them as conditions changed. What about our technological advantages? Krex asked. Our weapons are superior to theirs. Were superior, War Master. The humans have been capturing our equipment and somehow learning to use it against us. Yesterday, a human soldier destroyed one of our tanks using its own main gun. How? He climbed onto the tank during combat, forced open the hatch, and convinced the crew to surrender. Then he turned the tank around and used it to attack our other vehicles. Krex felt a headache building behind his eyes. Convince them to surrender? How does one human convince a tank crew to surrender? Commander Vex Thul checked his report reluctantly. According to the surviving crew members, he told them exactly how he was going to kill them if they didn't surrender. Then he demonstrated by showing them what he had done to the previous tank crew. And they believed him? War Master, the human was covered in the blood of their comrades and holding a thermal grenade with the safety pin removed. They found his argument very persuasive. This was the problem Krex was beginning to understand. The Dominion fought wars for profit. Their soldiers were professionals who followed orders and used established tactics. They fought until victory was achieved or until losses became too expensive to continue. The humans fought like their lives depended on victory. More than that, they fought like the lives of everyone they cared about depended on victory. Show me the tactical analysis of their command structure, Krex ordered. The display changed to show the estimated human unit positions. What Krex saw made no sense according to established military doctrine. Their officers are fighting on the EOS front lines, he observed. Yes, War Master. We have confirmed kills on several human captains and lieutenants. But instead of breaking down, their units seem to fight even harder after losing their commanders. That violates every principle of military organization. Sir, I don't think the humans follow our principles of military organization. Krex studied the display more carefully. Traditional armies had clear command structures, supply lines, and defensive positions. The human positions looked more like a web than a military formation. "Are they even organized into standard units?" he asked. "Intelligence is uncertain, War Master. They seem to form teams based on the mission requirements rather than formal structure. A sniper might work with infantry one day and tank crews the next. Engineers serve as assault troops when needed. Everyone seems trained to do everyone else's job." This was giving Krex a headache. How could you defeat an enemy that had no fixed structure to destroy? What about their supply situation? They must be running low on ammunition and food. "Actually, sir, they appear to be supplied primarily by captured Dominion resources. They eat our food, use our ammunition, and repair their equipment with our spare parts. They're living off our own supplies? It gets worse, War Master. They've convinced many Velothi to help them. The civilians are providing intelligence about our positions, hiding human soldiers, and even sabotaging our equipment." Krex slammed his fist on the tactical display. "The Velothi are pacifists. They don't fight." "They don't fight us directly, sir, but they will do anything to help the humans who are protecting their families." For the first time in his career, War Master Krex was facing a military situation he didn't understand. Every advantage the Dominion possessed was being turned against them. Superior numbers meant nothing when the enemy could appear anywhere and strike without warning. Advanced technology was useless when the enemy captured it and used it more effectively than its original owners. But the most disturbing report came when his communications officer approached with obvious reluctance. "War Master, we have intercepted human communications discussing their next objective." "Well, what is it?" "Sir, they appear to be planning an assault on this ship." Krex laughed harshly. "Assault the Annihilator? While it's in orbit? That's impossible even for these insane humans." "Yes, sir. That's what I thought too. But then I remembered that yesterday we thought it was impossible for them to capture a tank by climbing on top of it." The War Master fell silent. These humans had already accomplished several things that should have been impossible. Their entire military doctrine seemed to be based on finding new ways to do impossible things. "Double the security on all shuttle bays," he ordered. "Station guards at every docking port. I want sensors monitoring every approach to this ship." "Yes, War Master." But as his officers hurried to follow orders, Krex continued staring at the tactical display. The red indicators were spreading faster now. Human units were linking up, coordinating their attacks, building momentum. For the first time in centuries, a Dominion War Master was beginning to consider the possibility of defeat. On the planet below, Captain Lee Dae-ho studied his own tactical display. The situation was developing exactly as human military doctrine predicted. Superior numbers and firepower meant nothing against an enemy that refused to fight by conventional rules. "Status report," he requested from his officers. "All objectives secured, Captain. Civilian evacuation is proceeding ahead of schedule. Enemy resistance is collapsing across the northern continent." Lee Dae-ho nodded. "Phase 2 of the operation will commence at dawn. Signal all units. Prepare for orbital assault." His officers exchanged glances. They all knew what Phase 2 meant. It was time to take the war to the enemy's home. War Master. Krex was about to learn that humans didn't just fight on the ground, they fought everywhere. Across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear of the Dominion Empire gathered around their communication arrays, listening to reports that seemed impossible to believe. On Rigel Prime, the insectoid Zelthari Council met in emergency session. Their greatest military strategist, Hive Commander Ziktar, studied the intercepted transmissions with growing amazement. "The humans have been on the planet for only 72 hours, he reported to the council. In that time, they have rescued over 10,000 Valathi civilians, destroyed 47 Dominion military installations, and captured enough enemy equipment to arm their own forces. Council leader Yixara clicked her mandibles in disbelief. How many human soldiers are involved in this operation? Intelligence estimates approximately 3,000. 3,000, she repeated slowly. Against a Dominion occupation force of 40,000? The numbers appear to be correct, Council Leader. In the Proxima system, the aquatic Mordulans floated in their council chambers, their bioluminescent patches flickering with excitement. For generations, they had dreamed of someone standing up to the Dominion Empire. Play the intercepted transmission again, requested Prime Speaker Gulthes. The recording filled their chamber. This is Lieutenant Park So-Jin to all Dominion forces. I have taken control of your forward base. Your commander is dead. Half your soldiers are casualties. The civilians you were going to murder are now under my protection. The Mordulans had never heard anything like it. No one spoke to the Dominion with such casual confidence. No one challenged them directly and lived to tell about it. How is this possible? Asked Subspeaker Morlinth. The Dominion Empire has conquered hundreds of worlds. Their military is the most powerful force in the galaxy. Perhaps it was, replied Prime Speaker Gulthes thoughtfully, until they met a species that fights for something other than conquest or survival. But the most dramatic reaction came from the survivors of worlds that had already fallen to the Dominion. In refugee camps and hidden colonies across the galaxy, beings who had lost everything gathered around communication devices, barely daring to hope. On the edge of Dominion space, a small group of Alteran refugees listened to the reports in stunned silence. Their world had been one of the first to fall, their people scattered to the stellar winds. Is it real? Whispered former council leader Melvorin, the same being who had sent the desperate plea for help months earlier. Are the humans really winning? The reports are coming from multiple sources, replied their communications specialist. Dominion military frequencies, neutral observation posts, even some intercepted transmissions from the Dominion fleet itself. They listened as more updates came through. Human forces have liberated Mining Complex 7. All Valathi workers have been freed and are receiving medical attention. Dominion 3rd Infantry Division has suffered 90% casualties. Survivors are requesting immediate evacuation. Unknown human units have infiltrated and destroyed the main Dominion supply depot. Enemy forces are now experiencing critical shortages of food and ammunition. Each report sent waves of hope through communities that had given up believing in miracles. But nowhere was the impact more profound than on the remaining Valathi worlds. These crystal beings had watched helplessly as their neighbors were conquered one by one. Now they huddled around their communication arrays, listening to impossible news. On Crystalia Minor, the last free Valathi colony, Elder Thelvara broadcast, to his people, "My friends, the impossible has happened. The humans of Earth have answered our call for help. They are not just fighting the Dominion, they are winning." The reaction was immediate. Valathi throughout the galaxy began emerging from hiding, sending their own messages of support and gratitude. Some offered what little military equipment they possessed. Others provided intelligence about Dominion positions. Many simply sent messages of thanks to a species they had never met. The psychological impact on the Dominion was equally dramatic. For centuries, they had ruled through fear and the assumption that resistance was hopeless. Now, for the first time, doubt was creeping into their ranks. On the Dominion fortress world of Nexus Prime, General Harkoth received a steady stream of reports from the Kepler 442b operation. Each one was worse than the last. "Our forces are requesting immediate reinforcement," reported his aide. "They claim the humans are using tactics that violate all established rules of warfare." "Explain," Harkoth demanded. "Sir, yesterday a group of human soldiers convinced 300 Velothi miners to stage a revolt inside one of our processing facilities. While the miners distracted our guards, the humans infiltrated the control center and turned the facility's own defenses against our forces. Impossible. The Velothi are incapable of violence." "Apparently they're capable of a lot more than we thought when someone is protecting their children, General." Similar reports were coming from Dominion commanders throughout the galaxy. The Yaomai humans weren't just fighting, they were inspiring others to fight. Species that had been conquered were beginning to whisper about rebellion. Neutral worlds were reconsidering their policies of non-interference. But perhaps the most significant development occurred in the Deep Space Monitoring Station of the Galactic Commerce Council. This neutral organization had spent centuries documenting the rise and fall of civilizations, carefully avoiding involvement in military conflicts. Director Yolmas studied the latest intelligence reports with growing concern. The humans were doing more than winning a single battle. They were changing the fundamental balance of power in the galaxy. "Prepare a message to all member species," he ordered his staff. "Classification, Priority Alpha." The message that went out to every major civilization in the galaxy was simple but revolutionary. The Dominion Empire has suffered its first major military defeat in over 5 centuries. The species responsible, humans of Earth, appear to possess military capabilities and tactical doctrines previously unknown to galactic civilization. All members are advised to monitor this situation closely, as it may represent a significant shift in the galactic power structure. On Kepler 442b, Lieutenant Park So-jin crouched in a hidden observation post, watching a convoy of Dominion vehicles approaching a Velothi refugee camp. Her orders were to observe and report, but as she watched the enemy soldiers preparing their weapons, she made a different decision. "This is Recon Team 7 to all units," she broadcast on the secure human frequency. "I have eyes on a Dominion force about to attack civilian refugees. I'm going to stop them." The response came immediately from Captain Lee Dae-ho. "Negative, Lieutenant. You're outnumbered 20-1. Wait for support." So Jin smiled as she checked her rifle. "Sir, with respect, those are civilians down there. They're counting on us." She opened fire before he could respond. The galaxy watched through 1,000 different sensors as one human sniper engaged an entire Dominion convoy. What they saw changed their understanding of what was possible. The Dominion soldiers, despite their superior numbers and firepower, were routed within minutes. So-jin moved like a ghost through the crystal formations, striking from multiple positions, using every advantage the terrain offered. When it was over, the Velothi refugees were safe, and the convoy was destroyed. The message was clear to every species monitoring the situation. Humans didn't just fight for victory. They fought for principles. They risked their lives for strangers. They turned impossible situations into victories through sheer determination and tactical brilliance. Across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear began to feel something they hadn't experienced in centuries. Hope. The age of the Dominion Empire was ending. The age of humanity was about to begin. And somewhere in deep space, Admiral Yoon Hae-jin prepared to give the order that would change galactic history forever. All ships, prepare for Phase 3. We're taking this war to the Dominion's home worlds. War Master Krex stood in the command center of the Annihilator, watching his empire crumble on the tactical displays. 5 days of fighting had reduced his occupation force from 40,000 soldiers to less than 8,000. The humans had achieved what no military force in galactic history had accomplished. They had broken a Dominion army. "Status report," he demanded, though he dreaded the answer. Commander Vex Thule approached with obvious reluctance. "War Master, we have lost control of the entire northern continent. Human forces have liberated all major population centers and are advancing on our remaining positions. Our supply lines are completely cut off. What about reinforcements from the fleet?" "Sir, Admiral Korvax reports that human naval forces are engaging our ships throughout the system. Their tactics are unconventional." Krex turned to stare at his subordinate. "Unconventional how?" "They appear to be using their transport ships as weapons, War Master. They ram our vessels at high speed, then board us while we're dealing with the damage. Suicide attacks? No, sir. The crews survive and continue fighting aboard our ships. 3 of our destroyers have been captured intact. This was beyond anything in Krex's military experience. The humans fought with a combination of tactical brilliance and complete disregard for conventional warfare. They turned every disadvantage into an advantage, every defeat into a victory. But Krex still had one option left. The Dominion Empire had ruled for 5 centuries because they possessed weapons that could destroy entire worlds. If he couldn't conquer Kepler 442b conventionally, he would ensure that no one else could have it either. "Prepare the planet killer. Weapon," he ordered. The bridge fell silent. Even by Dominion standards, planetary annihilation was an extreme measure. It was expensive, wasteful, and attracted unwanted attention from neutral species. "War Master," Commander Vex Thule said carefully, "the planet killer has never been used on a world with this much strategic value. The crystal deposits alone are worth—" "I don't care about the crystals," Krex snarled. "I care about sending a message to the galaxy. If these humans want to protect the Velathi so badly, they can die with them. Sir, there are still 8,000 of our own troops on the surface. Then they will die as heroes of the Empire." The crew began the lengthy process of charging the planet killer weapon. It would take 6 hours to reach full power, but once fired, it would turn the entire world into radioactive ash. But Krex had made one crucial mistake. He had forgotten that humans were very good at gathering intelligence. Specialist Bei Ji-Wan crouched in the maintenance shaft of a captured Dominion communications relay, her portable computer interfaces plugged into the enemy's data networks. For the past 3 days, she had been conducting electronic warfare against Dominion forces, intercepting their messages and disrupting their communications. What she discovered made her blood run cold. "Command, this is Specialist Bay," she transmitted on the encrypted human frequency. "Priority Alpha message. The Dominion flagship is charging some kind of superweapon. Analysis of intercepted data suggests it's designed for planetary destruction." The response came immediately from Admiral Yoon Hye-jin aboard the UEC Indomitable. "Specialist, how long until the weapon is ready to fire?" "Approximately 5 hours and 40 minutes, Admiral." "Understood. All units, this is Admiral Yoon. Execute. Operation Rising Star immediately. We are out of time." Across the planet, human forces received the coded message. Operation Rising Star was the plan they had hoped never to use, a direct assault on the Dominion flagship. Captain Lee Dae-ho gathered his officers in the ruins of what had once been a Velathi temple. Around them, his soldiers prepared for what might be their final mission. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said quietly, "the enemy has decided that if they can't win, they'll make sure nobody else can either. They're preparing to destroy this entire planet." The reaction was immediate. Sergeant Kim Tae-woo spoke for everyone. "Sir, there are millions of Velati on this world, and our own people." "I'm aware of that, Sergeant, which is why we're going, to stop them." Lieutenant Park So-jin studied the tactical display showing the Dominion fleet in orbit. "Captain, how exactly do we assault a flagship that's surrounded by defensive screens and escort vessels?" Lee Dae-ho smiled grimly. "The same way we've won every battle in this war, Lieutenant. We do something they don't expect. The plan was insane even by human standards. While Admiral Yoon's fleet engaged the Dominion ships in a conventional space battle, volunteer assault teams would use captured Dominion shuttles to infiltrate the enemy flagship. It was a suicide mission disguised as a rescue operation. "I need volunteers," Lee Dae-ho announced. "The odds of survival are minimal. Anyone who wants to stay behind and continue the ground campaign has my complete understanding." Every soldier in the room stepped forward. "With respect, sir," said Sergeant Kim Tae-woo, "we didn't come this far to let these bastards murder innocent people." Similar scenes played out across the planet as human forces prepared for their desperate gambit. They had come to save the Velathai, and they would complete that mission even if it cost them their lives. In the deep caves where the Velathi had taken shelter, Elder Thane Vextar listened to the human broadcasts with growing amazement. These strange beings from a distant world were preparing to sacrifice themselves to save people they had barely met. "Why?" he asked the human communications officer who was coordinating the evacuation. "Why would your people risk everything for us?" "Corporal." Jang Yun-seo looked up from her equipment. "Elder, where I come from, we have an old saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." She gestured toward the ceiling, where the sounds of battle echoed from the surface. "Your people called for help, and we answered. That's what humans do. We help." As the assault teams prepared to launch, Admiral Yoon Hee-jin opened a channel to all human forces. "This is Admiral Yoon to all coalition forces. Today we face an enemy that would rather destroy a world than see it free. They believe that might makes right, that the strong can do whatever they want to the weak." She paused, looking out at the above stars where her ships were preparing for battle. "They're about to learn that they're wrong. They're about to discover that sometimes, when innocent people call for help, heroes answer. Today we show the galaxy what humans fight for. Not conquest, not resources, not glory." The space around Kepler 442b erupted in fire as human and Dominion fleets engaged in desperate combat. "We fight for justice. We fight for the innocent. We fight because someone has to." War Master Krex watched the battle unfold, confident that his superior numbers would prevail. The humans fought bravely, but they were outnumbered 3-1. But as the first captured Dominion shuttles approached his flagship, he began to understand that the humans had one more surprise waiting for him. They weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to save everyone, even if it killed them. The final battle for Kepler 442b was about to begin. Captain Lee Dae-ho felt the familiar vibration of atmospheric entry as his captured Dominion shuttle approached the massive bulk of the Annihilator. Around him, 20 of humanity's finest soldiers checked their weapons one last time. They all knew this was likely a one-way mission. 60 seconds to docking," announced the pilot, Corporal Jang Yun-seo. She had volunteered to fly the most dangerous part of the mission, navigating through the battle raging around the flagship. Through the shuttle's viewports, Lee Dae-ho could see the space battle unfolding. Admiral Yoon's fleet was heavily outnumbered, But they were fighting with the desperate courage of people who knew that millions of lives depended on their success. "All teams, report status," he commanded. "Team 2 approaching docking base 7, came Lieutenant Park So-jin's voice. She was leading the group that would disable the ship's defensive systems. "Team 3, moving to engineering," reported Sergeant Kim Tae-woo. His job was to prevent the Dominion from overloading their reactor if the assault succeeded. "Team 4, targeting the Weapon Control Center," added Specialist Bae Ji-won. She would be trying to shut down the planet-killer weapon from the inside. Each team had an impossible mission. Together, they might just save a world. "Docking in 10 seconds, Jang announced. "Remember, we're supposed to be a damaged Dominion patrol returning from the surface. Try to look defeated." The shuttle settled into the docking bay with a soft thud. Through the viewports, they could see Dominion crew members approaching to assist what they thought were their own soldiers. "Now," Lee Dae-ho whispered. The shuttle doors exploded outward, and 20 human soldiers poured into the docking bay like avenging angels. The surprised Dominion crew barely had time to raise their weapons before they were overwhelmed. "Secure the area," Lee Dae-ho ordered. "We have 4 hours to save this planet." The assault team split up, each heading for their assigned objectives. The Annihilator was a massive ship with over 10,000 crew members and multiple layers of security. But the humans had studied captured Dominion technical manuals and knew exactly where they needed to go. Lieutenant Park So-jin led her team through the maintenance corridors toward the ship's primary defensive control center. They moved like ghosts through the metal passages, avoiding patrols and security checkpoints. "Contact," whispered Private Choi Min-ho as they approached their target. 20 guards at the entrance." So-jin studied the situation through her scope. The control center was heavily defended, but the guards were positioned to stop an attack from the main corridor, not from the maintenance shafts above. "Standard infiltration pattern," she ordered. "Min-ho, you and Lee take the left flank. I'll provide cover from above." The attack lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, the humans had control of the ship's defensive systems. But that was just the beginning. "This is Team 2, So-jin reported. "Defensive control secured. Beginning shutdown of point defense weapons." Meanwhile, Sergeant Kim Tae-woo's team had reached the engineering section. The massive reactor core hummed with deadly energy, monitored by dozens of Dominion technicians. "Remember," Tae-woo whispered to his soldiers, "we need those technicians alive. If they scuttle the reactor, this ship becomes a nuclear weapon." The assault was swift and precise. The human soldiers moved with the efficiency of a special operations unit, neutralizing threats while protecting the essential personnel who kept the ship running. "Engineering secured," Tae-woo reported. "Reactor is stable and under our control." But the most critical mission belonged to Specialist Bae Ji-won. The planet-killer weapon was housed in the ship's most secure section, protected by multiple layers of security and guarded by Krex's elite troops. Bae's team fought their way through corridor after corridor, facing increasingly desperate resistance. The Dominion crew was beginning to realize that their ship was under attack by a force that seemed to be everywhere at once. 2 minutes to the weapon control center," Bae reported as her team blasted through another security door. "Heavy resistance, but we're making progress." On the bridge, War Master Krex watched his command displays with growing alarm. Security alerts were flashing throughout the ship. Somehow, human soldiers had infiltrated his flagship. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We are in the middle of space, surrounded by our own fleet." "War Master," his security chief reported. "The humans used captured shuttles to reach us. They're attacking multiple critical systems simultaneously. How many of them are there? Unknown, sir. They appear to be everywhere at once. This was the human way of war that the Dominion had never learned to counter. While other species attacked in predictable formations, humans struck like lightning, hitting every weakness simultaneously. Status of the planet killer weapon? Krex asked. 90% charged, War Master. We can fire in 30 minutes. Accelerate the charging sequence. I want that weapon ready in 15 minutes. But as he gave the order, Captain Lee Daeho appeared on the bridge. The human commander had fought his way through 6 decks of security, leaving a trail of unconscious guards behind him. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had been in impossible situations before. War Master Krex, Lee Daeho said politely. I'm Captain Lee Daeho of the United Earth Coalition. I'm here to accept your surrender. Krex stared at the human in disbelief. This being was smaller than a Dominion soldier, carrying primitive weapons and completely outnumbered. Yet he stood on the bridge of the most powerful warship in the galaxy and demanded surrender. Surrender? Krex laughed. You have perhaps 100 soldiers on my ship. I have 10,000 crew members. Had 10,000, Lee Daeho corrected. My people have secured all critical systems. Your weapon is offline, your defenses are down, and your reactor is under our control. As if to prove his point, Specialist. Bay's voice came over the ship's communication system. All stations, this is the human assault force. The planet killer weapon has been disabled. Any attempt to restart it will result in immediate reactor shutdown. Krex felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of defeat. The impossible was happening. His mighty warship was being captured by a handful of human soldiers. Even if you control my ship, he snarled, you cannot win. The rest of my fleet will destroy you all. Lee Daeho smiled. War Master, look at your tactical display. Krex turned to the main screen and felt his heart stop. The space battle was over. Admiral Yoon's fleet had achieved the impossible, defeating a force 3 times their size. Dominion ships were surrendering or fleeing throughout the system. How? He whispered. We fight for something you've never understood, Lee Daeho replied. We fight for each other, for strangers, for the idea that innocent people deserve to live in peace. On the planet below, the Velathi emerged from their caves to see the Dominion fleet in retreat. Human soldiers walked among them, offering medical aid and helping to repair the damage from the bombardment. Elder Thane Vextar stood in the ruins of his city, watching human medics treating wounded Velathi children. These strange beings had traveled across the galaxy to help people they had never met, asking for nothing in return. Why? He asked Lieutenant Park So-jin as she coordinated the relief efforts. Why did you come? So-jin looked up from the Velathi child she was bandaging. Elder, we received your message. You called for help. But we are strangers to you. We have nothing to offer in return. You don't need to offer us anything, So-jin replied. Helping people in need is just what humans do. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The Dominion Empire had suffered its first major defeat in 5 centuries. Their most powerful fleet had been routed by a smaller human force. Their supposedly invincible flagship had been captured intact. But more importantly, the galaxy had witnessed something it had never seen before, a species that fought not for conquest or profit, but for justice. On the bridge of the Annihilator, War Master Krex stared at the tactical display showing his empire's defeat. What happens now? He asked. Captain Lee Dae-ho considered the question. Now you face justice. Your soldiers who surrender will be treated according to galactic law. Your officers who ordered attacks on civilians will stand trial, and you will have the opportunity to learn what it means to live in a galaxy where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. As the human fleet took control of the system, messages began arriving from across the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear for centuries were sending their own distress calls, not to anyone who might listen, but specifically to Earth. The Zelthari requested help liberating their occupied colonies. The Mordulans asked for assistance, protecting their trade routes. The Alteran refugees begged for aid in reclaiming their homeworld. Admiral Yoon Hye-jin read the messages with a mixture of pride and concern. "Captain, I think we may have started something we can't finish." Lee Dae-ho looked out at the stars, where the signals of hope were arriving faster than they could be counted. "Admiral, 3 months ago the galaxy had given up on justice. They thought the strong would always prey on the weak, and no one would ever come to help." He gestured toward the planet below, where humans and Velati were working together to rebuild what the Dominion had destroyed. Today they learned that when innocent people call for help, humans,